You don't belong here. The words cut across the pristine penthouse floor like a whip, sharp and sudden, echoing against the high ceilings and crystal chandeliers. Jasmine Hayes paused, her eyes meeting the broker's smug gaze, a quiet power radiating from her stance. She wore a plain white blouse tucked into dark slacks, her hair pulled back simply, no entourage, no designer labels, nothing to hint at the billions she commanded in the real estate world. The broker, a man in his 40s with a tailored gray suit, leaned back slightly, crossing his arms as if his judgment could rewrite reality. Around them, the polished marble reflected the tension in the air, and Jasmine could hear the subtle rustle of guests who had stopped to watch, their whispers growing into questions. Who is she? Does she even have a reservation? Jasmine walked forward deliberately, her heels clicking softly, almost inaudible compared to the weight of the moment. Every step measured, every gesture controlled. She approached the table where the broker had spread out brochures for prospective buyers, his pen poised like a weapon. He looked down his nose at her again, a faint smirk playing on his lips. I think there's been a mistake, ma'am. This viewing isn't open to the public. Jasmine's lips curved slightly, not in amusement but in calm assurance. She reached into her bag and pulled out a sleek tablet, tapping the screen once to illuminate the top of the building's ownership files, carefully hidden within her executive suite app. The broker's eyes flickered with a trace of unease, his smirk faltering for the first time, but he quickly covered it with a cough. Jasmine didn't speak. She didn't need to. The air shifted as guests leaned closer, some raising their phones subtly, capturing the moment, the atmosphere charged, almost electric. I believe there's been a misunderstanding, Jasmine finally said, her voice low and steady, carrying effortlessly across the lobby. But I can assure you, you're looking at the wrong assumptions. The broker's hand twitched toward the tablet, a reflexive gesture to assert control, but Jasmine's gaze met his, unwavering, a silent command that stopped him. Mid-motion, around them, the luxury furnishings, the sparkling glass, and the artfully arranged flowers seemed to fade into the background as the tension condensed into a single, silent standoff. A few guests murmured, uncertain, watching closely, the quiet hum of air conditioning mixing with the subtle clicks of camera phones. Jasmine's assistant, positioned discreetly near the entrance, tapped into the corporate server, initiating the verification protocol, screens lighting up with ownership records and bank confirmations. The broker's breath hitched slightly, a crack forming in the wall of confidence he had erected, and Jasmine let her eyes glide across the room, calm, patient, knowing that every witness, every subtle recording, was now aligned with the truth she carried effortlessly. The hum of whispers turned into a faint collective intake of breath, the realization slowly spreading like morning light through the glass panes. This was not a challenge Jasmine could lose. The power she held, hidden behind simplicity and poise, was about to be revealed, and everyone present would see just how far perception had strayed from reality. And as Jasmine adjusted her stance, subtle but deliberate, a quiet smile played across her lips, hinting at the storm of revelation that would unfold within minutes, leaving the broker in the room entirely unprepared for the reckoning that was about to claim the entire tower. Jasmine Hayes took a measured breath, her fingers brushing the sleek edge of the tablet as she activated the tower ownership protocol. The lobby had grown still, the murmurs of guests fading into a tense silence, everyone sensing the pivot about to occur. The broker straightened, attempting to regain control, but his posture lacked conviction, the smirk on his face wavering as he realized the assumptions he had made might be unfounded. Jasmine's assistant, standing near the doorway, began projecting verified documents onto the tablet, showing floor plans, deeds, and legal ownership papers, each click and swipe amplifying the truth of her presence. Guests leaned in, some craning their necks to glimpse the unfolding verification, their eyes wide with disbelief. As they saw the tower map highlight her name across each floor, Jasmine kept her gaze calm, unyielding, her presence anchoring the space with quiet authority, no words needed to assert her command. The broker tried to interject, offering objections about procedures and policies, but Jasmine's steady voice cut through, measured yet firm. You may question appearances, but reality cannot be rewritten. She allowed a subtle pause, letting the weight of the moment settle, the guests holding their collective breath as the truth became undeniable. One by one, other potential buyers and onlookers began murmuring among themselves, realizing the audacity of the misjudgment, the layers of bias and presumption that had colored the broker's assumptions. Jasmine adjusted her stance, the tablet glowing in her hand, the documentation confirming her words with undeniable clarity, and the lobby shifted from skeptical to awestruck in an almost imperceptible wave. She stepped closer to the broker, not threatening, not confrontational, merely guiding the room's attention toward the undeniable fact that she was not a visitor, but the rightful owner of every unit and every floor. The broker's hand hovered nervously over the brochures, uncertain how to respond as guests began reaching for their phones, some quietly recording, others whispering confirmations to each other. Jasmine's eyes moved across the room, acknowledging the silent support building around her, and she gave a slight nod toward her assistant, who began sending alerts to the corporate office, locking in the verification process across multiple systems. The tension condensed into a single, electric pulse that enveloped the lobby, and Jasmine's calm presence served as a focal point, a magnet drawing attention to the contrast between false assumptions and undeniable fact. The broker opened his mouth again, hesitated, then closed it, the realization sinking in that the narrative he had tried to control was now collapsing around him, while every observer in the room now understood the magnitude of Jasmine's authority. The murmurs swelled, not as challenge, but as recognition, the collective acknowledgment of truth settling. Like a tangible weight in the marble-floored lobby, and Jasmine remained poised, unflustered, every movement precise, every gesture purposeful, fully aware that this quiet, deliberate assertion of power had completely shifted the balance in the room without a single raised voice, leaving only anticipation of the next moments that would cement her triumph and reveal the full scope of her authority. Jasmine Hayes straightened, holding the tablet like a shield of undeniable authority as the room absorbed the cascading proof of her ownership. Guests who had been silent moments ago now leaned in, murmuring confirmations, their eyes shifting between the broker and the illuminated documents. The broker, pale and uncertain, tried to muster control with procedural objections, referencing viewing rules and policies, but his voice sounded hollow against the quiet confidence Jasmine radiated. Each swipe of her finger revealed more records, floor after floor under her name, corporate approvals, legal stamps, and bank confirmations. The lobby air seemed to thicken with realization as the guests sensed the truth settling into every corner, their subtle gasps punctuating the tense silence. Jasmine's assistant stood by, phone in hand, quietly notifying her executive team, while Jasmine allowed a brief glance around the room, acknowledging the growing number of witnesses who were now aligned with the truth of her presence. She moved slowly, deliberately, toward the center of the room, each step measured, the gentle click of her shoes on the marble floor echoing the heartbeat of the moment. The broker attempted a gesture to regain dominance, reaching for the brochures, but Jasmine's eyes met his, steady and commanding, and he paused mid-motion, uncertainty overtaking his prior confidence. The subtle hum of whispered conversations intensified as guests, now fully engaged, began capturing discrete recordings, capturing the pivot of authority that was happening before them. Jasmine's calm demeanor contrasted starkly with the broker's faltering poise, reinforcing the reality that control did not require aggression, only clarity and evidence. As she approached the front desk, she tapped once more on the tablet, bringing up a visual map of the tower with her name emblazoned across every unit, the proof now impossible to ignore. Guests craned their necks, leaning closer, their disbelief transforming into recognition, an almost tactile shift in atmosphere as the balance of power tipped irreversibly. The broker's attempts to speak were interrupted by murmurs of agreement, questions, and recorded confirmations, his authority eroding with every passing second, while Jasmine's presence remained anchored, unwavering, unshakable. She paused, letting the weight of the evidence, the growing awareness among the onlookers, and the sheer clarity of the truth settle across the room like sunlight filling a darkened hall. A subtle smile touched her lips, quiet but potent, signaling that the unfolding reckoning was only beginning, that the room had witnessed the tipping point, and that every observer now understood that the assumptions they had accepted without question were about to be rewritten by the calm, methodical assertion of Jasmine Hayes's rightful power. Jasmine Hayes shifted her weight slightly, the tablet still in hand, letting the evidence speak louder than any words could. The lobby had become a silent theater, the hum of conversation reduced to the subtle clicking of phones capturing every move, every proof she presented. The broker fidgeted, attempting to regain composure, but each display of floor plans, deeds, and ownership certificates tightened the grip of reality around him. Guests began whispering among themselves, some exchanging astonished glances, their attention fully captured by the contrast between Jasmine's serene authority and the broker's faltering confidence. She stepped closer to the main viewing table, her movements deliberate, her eyes scanning the room, acknowledging the silent support forming around her. A few guests subtly raised their phones, recording, sharing, capturing the moment that would ripple beyond the penthouse. Jasmine allowed a faint smile, calm, precise, as the broker attempted a final interruption, his voice weak against the clarity of the documents before everyone present. She tapped the tablet once more, bringing up the entire tower layout, each unit highlighted under her name, and the room collectively leaned in, gasps rising softly, disbelief giving way to recognition. The broker froze, realizing that his assumptions, his casual dismissal, had been entirely unfounded. Jasmine's assistant whispered quietly, confirming that corporate notifications had been sent, systems updated, verification complete, and Jasmine nodded ever so slightly, letting the weight of the moment sink fully into the room. The lobby now seemed to pulse with anticipation, each person witnessing a subtle but irrevocable shift in power, the energy settling around Jasmine as the undeniable proof of her ownership extended beyond a single penthouse to the entire tower. She moved deliberately toward the central display, her calm presence commanding the space without a single raised voice, her poise and preparation leaving the broker and staff visibly unsettled. Guests exchanged looks, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others silently affirming the justice unfolding before them, their reactions a mirror of the balance being restored. Jasmine's eyes swept across the room, noting each witness, each recording, and each subtle acknowledgement that the narrative had shifted irrevocably, leaving the broker isolated, his authority undermined by the quiet power and preparation of Jasmine Hayes. The atmosphere was electric but controlled, the tension a living entity, and every eye in the lobby now fully understood the truth, the scope of her command, and the inevitability of the consequences that would follow, as Jasmine prepared to take the next steps to fully assert the authority that had been challenged from the moment she entered. Jasmine Hayes allowed the room to absorb the undeniable truth, her presence a calm anchor amid the shifting energy of the lobby. Guests who had been hesitant moments ago now shifted subtly, some leaning forward, others quietly nodding as the reality of her authority became clear. The broker's attempts at intervention faltered further, each word of protest lost against the growing awareness of every witness present. Jasmine's assistant discreetly ensured all digital verifications were completed, each confirmation ping reinforcing the legitimacy of her presence, and Jasmine watched the subtle changes in body language, the small gestures of acknowledgement, the slight tilts of heads toward her as the realization spread. She stepped slowly, deliberately, across the polished marble floor, the soft echo of her heels punctuating the silence, commanding attention without raising her voice, every movement deliberate, every gesture measured. The broker shifted uneasily, aware now that the narrative he had tried to control was no longer in his hands, his confident facade beginning to crumble under the weight of documented reality. Guests began softly murmuring among themselves, some exchanging knowing glances, others discreetly recording the unfolding moment, the collective consciousness of the room aligning with the undeniable proof before them. Jasmine's eyes moved across the space, noting each recording, each witness, each subtle sign that perception was being corrected in real time. The lobby, once a space of casual observation, had transformed into a stage for authority, with Jasmine Hayes at its center, poised, controlled, the calm before the final acknowledgement of power. She tapped the tablet one final time, bringing up the comprehensive overview of the tower, every unit clearly marked under her name, every legal approval, every verified transaction displayed with precise clarity, leaving no room for doubt. The broker, flustered and isolated, attempted to speak again, but his words were weak, stifled by the quiet assertion of truth that Jasmine embodied. A few guests, emboldened by the clarity and confidence she radiated, whispered confirmations, subtly engaging with their phones to ensure the moment was captured, the scene now undeniably viral-ready. Jasmine allowed a faint, controlled smile, acknowledging the silent alignment forming around her, the shift in authority now complete in perception, if not yet in action. The atmosphere was charged, yet calm, every eye fixed on the methodical unfolding of validation and truth, and Jasmine, in her deliberate movements and composed demeanor, communicated that the next steps, though unspoken, would solidify the balance that had been challenged from the moment she entered the penthouse lobby, leaving the broker and staff fully aware of the inevitability of the consequences that would follow. Jasmine Hayes allowed the lobby to settle into a tense stillness, the energy thick with anticipation as guests absorbed the undeniable clarity of her authority. Each subtle shift of heads, each quiet glance at the tablet, reinforced the reality of her ownership, and the broker's attempts at composure faltered further under the weight of concrete proof. She moved deliberately, her heels clicking softly on the marble, every step calculated, every gesture precise, commanding the room without a single raised voice. Guests leaned in, some whispering among themselves, others discreetly recording the unfolding moment, their expressions a mix of disbelief and growing admiration as the full extent of her control became evident. Jasmine's assistant continued confirming ownership across multiple systems, each notification a quiet echo of legitimacy that reinforced the shift in power. The broker tried to interject again, referencing procedural rules and policies, but his words were muted, falling flat against the organized calm Jasmine radiated. She allowed a measured pause, letting the room absorb the proof, the murmurs of realization and acknowledgment spreading subtly among the witnesses. Jasmine's gaze swept across the space, noting each subtle expression, each raised phone, every indicator that the narrative had irreversibly shifted. She tapped the tablet once more, bringing up detailed floor plans and financial verifications, every unit in the tower unmistakably tied to her name, every document meticulously verified and timestamped. The lobby, once a passive space for observation, had transformed into a stage of authority, each observer now aligned with the truth unfolding before them. Jasmine's calm composure contrasted sharply with the broker's faltering attempts at control, his gestures halting, his voice unsure, every indication that the perception of dominance he had relied on was dissolving. Guests began to murmur, softly, exchanging quick acknowledgments and confirmations, the collective awareness of the room now fully engaged, recognizing the reality of Jasmine Hayes' position. She allowed herself a subtle nod toward her assistant, acknowledging the completed verification process, and then surveyed the room once more, every detail observed, every reaction registered, reinforcing her command. The tension in the lobby, previously charged with skepticism and unease, now shifted into a recognition of authority, the subtle but firm acknowledgment of her presence spreading through every witness. Jasmine's deliberate movements, her controlled expressions, and the precise execution of her verification protocols left no doubt, signaling to everyone present that the next actions, though unspoken, would cement her power and establish the proper order in the room. The broker's gestures grew increasingly tentative, guests adjusted their positions to capture every moment, and the atmosphere held on the cusp of full acknowledgement, every eye focused, every mind recalibrating, as Jasmine Hayes prepared to take the final steps to assert her authority over the entire tower. The room fully conscious of the impending resolution and the transformation of perception that had been set in motion from the moment she entered. Jasmine Hayes felt the subtle shift in the room as guests began to recognize the discrepancy between perception and reality. Her gaze swept methodically across the lobby, noting each subtle reaction, each raised phone capturing every angle of the unfolding moment. The broker attempted to reassert control, gesturing toward floor plans and reservation slips, but his words faltered against the calm, unwavering presence of Jasmine. She stepped forward, her movements deliberate, each motion measured, and the click of her heels echoed softly on the marble floors, commanding attention without raising her voice. Guests leaned in, exchanging murmurs, their collective focus fixed on the verification displayed on the tablet. Floor after floor, unit after unit, Jasmine's name glowed across the layout. Every legal approval, every bank confirmation clearly documented and unmistakable. The broker's smirk faded, replaced by uncertainty, and he hesitated, realizing that the room's perception had shifted entirely. Jasmine allowed a small, controlled nod to her assistant, signaling that the verification protocol was fully engaged and that every system now reflected the unassailable truth of her ownership. The subtle buzz of whispered conversations spread through the lobby, guests commenting softly to each other, capturing video clips discreetly, the awareness of authority spreading like a quiet current through the room. Jasmine's composure contrasted sharply with the broker's floundering attempts to reclaim dominance, highlighting the difference between assumed power and true authority. She tapped the tablet once more, bringing up a comprehensive visual of the tower. Every unit confirmed under her ownership, and the guests' reactions shifted from disbelief to acknowledgment, their subtle nods and widened eyes a mirror to the correction of assumptions. The broker's attempts to speak again were met with polite but unyielding silence, and Jasmine's measured presence conveyed all that needed to be understood. She allowed her eyes to move across the lobby once more, noting every witness, every subtle recording, every reaction that confirmed the alignment of perception with reality. The atmosphere was charged yet orderly, the collective attention of every guest reinforcing the quiet, methodical assertion of power. Jasmine's poise, the careful display of verifiable proof, and the composed movements ensured that the narrative of control had fully shifted, leaving the broker isolated and uncertain. Every subtle gesture, every quiet observation from the guests served as confirmation that the room had collectively recognized the truth, that the misjudgment, the initial dismissal, and the false assumptions had been corrected through calm authority and organized evidence. As Jasmine stood in the center of the lobby, tablet in hand, the guest's focus fixed entirely on her, the moment poised on the edge of revelation, the final acknowledgement of her command ready to unfold, leaving no doubt about who truly held authority within the tower and setting the stage for the decisive actions that would follow. Jasmine Hayes paused at the center of the lobby, letting the evidence displayed on the tablet settle into the consciousness of every person present. The soft murmurs of the guests shifted from curiosity to recognition as they realized the full extent of her ownership, each legal document and bank confirmation a tangible assertion of authority that could not be ignored. The broker, visibly uncertain, attempted to reclaim composure, his gestures hesitant and his voice faltering under the weight of the undeniable proof. Jasmine's assistant stood discreetly to the side, ensuring that all notifications to corporate offices and verification systems were completed, each ping reinforcing the clarity of Jasmine's position. Jasmine's calm yet commanding presence drew the attention of every guest, her movements deliberate, each step echoing softly across the marble floor, her demeanor both elegant and formidable without needing to raise her voice. Guests began whispering quietly to each other, some exchanging subtle nods, others discreetly recording the moment, their expressions a mixture of surprise and respect as they absorbed the unfolding truth. The broker's attempts to interject were interrupted by the quiet acknowledgement of Jasmine's authority radiating through the room, and he realized that any further protest would be futile against the combined weight of evidence, preparation, and composure. Jasmine tapped the tablet again, highlighting every floor, every unit, every verified transaction under her name, each visual reinforcing the inescapable fact of her command over the tower. The room held a collective breath, the tension shifting into a quiet acknowledgement of power and justice, the subtle click of heels, and the hum of whispered observations punctuating the silent drama. Jasmine's eyes scanned the room, noting every raised phone, every recording, every witness whose perception had been corrected, every subtle gesture confirming that the authority she held was now universally recognized in that space. The atmosphere was charged, yet controlled, a testament to the deliberate and methodical assertion of her power, and the lobby itself seemed to acknowledge the shift, the polished surfaces reflecting the clarity and precision of the moment. The broker's posture sagged, his previous confidence replaced by uncertainty, while Jasmine, calm and resolute, allowed the guests to fully witness the transformation in control, the reversal of assumptions, and the undeniable truth that she, Jasmine Hayes, held authority over the tower and every unit within it. The subtle but powerful acknowledgment from the audience, the guests' quiet support, and the flawless execution of verification protocols solidified the shift in perception, leaving the broker and staff acutely aware that the moment of reckoning had arrived and that the lobby, once a stage of challenge, now served as a testament to Jasmine Hayes' composed and unwavering command. Jasmine Hayes took a steady breath, allowing the room to absorb the weight of the verification displayed on the tablet. Guests who had been hesitant moments ago now shifted slightly, their expressions softening into recognition as the reality of her ownership became undeniable. The broker, attempting to maintain composure, gestured toward floor plans and documents, but his voice faltered under the undeniable clarity of evidence Jasmine had meticulously prepared. She stepped forward, every movement deliberate, her eyes sweeping across the room, observing subtle shifts in posture, raised eyebrows, and quiet acknowledgement from those who had been previously skeptical. Her assistant, standing slightly to the side, confirmed the final details of the verification process, each system update and notification reinforcing the legitimacy of her claim. Jasmine's calm presence radiated authority, commanding attention without a single raised voice, and the murmurs of the guests evolved from uncertainty into whispers of acknowledgement, their phones discreetly capturing the scene. Each swipe on the tablet revealed comprehensive layouts of the tower, ownership details for every unit, legal confirmations, and financial validations, leaving no room for dispute. The broker's gestures became tentative, his prior confidence giving way to a growing awareness that the room's perception had shifted. Irreversibly, Jasmine's subtle nod to her assistant signaled the completion of the verification, and she allowed herself a brief, controlled smile, acknowledging the quiet support now evident throughout the lobby. Guests began sharing discreet observations, whispering confirmations to each other, their reactions quietly reinforcing the shift in authority, while Jasmine remained poised, her movements precise and purposeful. The atmosphere was charged yet controlled, every eye in the room focused on the unfolding truth, and the collective acknowledgement of Jasmine Hayes' command solidified in a way that was both quiet and unmistakable. The broker attempted to interject once more, but the calm authority Jasmine projected rendered his protests ineffectual, his words lost against the undeniable evidence and the growing understanding of the witnesses. Jasmine's gaze swept the room, noting every recording, every subtle gesture, every subtle shift of perception, ensuring that each observer recognized the full scope of her authority. The lobby, once a space of challenge and skepticism, had transformed into a testament to meticulous preparation, calm confidence, and undeniable truth, and Jasmine stood at the center, her presence both commanding and composed, guiding the room toward an understanding that the assumptions and dismissals of the past were fully corrected, and that the next moments would irrevocably affirm her position and influence within the tower. Jasmine Hayes took a deliberate step closer to the center of the lobby, her calm presence commanding the attention of every guest without a single raised voice. The tablet in her hands displayed the complete verification of the tower's ownership, floor after floor, unit after unit, each legal confirmation illuminated clearly for everyone to see. Guests whispered among themselves, some nodding, others discreetly raising their phones to record the moment, the atmosphere charged with anticipation and recognition. The broker attempted another gesture, trying to assert authority, but Jasmine's steady gaze met his, unyielding and composed, and his confidence faltered under the weight of documented reality. Her assistant quietly confirmed that every corporate verification had been completed, notifications sent, and systems updated, reinforcing the indisputable truth of Jasmine's presence. Jasmine allowed a subtle nod, acknowledging the silent support forming around her, the quiet alignment of witnesses who now understood the scope of her command. She moved deliberately, every motion controlled, every step measured, her heels echoing softly on the marble floors, punctuating the gravity of the moment. Guests leaned in, the soft rustle of clothing, the faint murmur of conversations, and the click of phones capturing evidence combining into a symphony of awareness, a collective recognition of authority that no one could dispute. The broker, once poised and confident, now hesitated, each attempt to speak or gesticulate met with polite but undeniable acknowledgment of Jasmine's control over the entire property. Jasmine tapped the tablet once more, highlighting detailed layouts, financial confirmations, and verified transactions, each visual proof reinforcing the shift in the room's perception. The lobby, once a neutral space, had transformed into a stage of authority, every eye following her movements, every observer engaged, the energy balanced between awe and understanding. She paused briefly, letting the weight of the evidence and the room's attention settle fully, allowing the guests to internalize the reality that the assumptions and dismissals from moments earlier were completely overturned. Jasmine's subtle, composed smile signaled that the decisive moment was near, that the alignment of perception and truth had been achieved, and that the room now recognized her as the rightful authority. The broker's gestures grew tentative, his voice uncertain, while Jasmine remained the calm center of the room, methodically guiding attention toward the undeniable documentation that proved her position. Each whisper, each raised phone, each glance toward the tablet reinforced the collective understanding, creating an atmosphere where the narrative of challenge had been replaced by the reality of control. Jasmine's movements and expressions conveyed clarity, precision, and authority, allowing the witnesses to fully appreciate the depth of her power, the meticulous preparation behind her presence, and the inevitability of the conclusion that would soon be revealed, leaving the lobby entirely aligned with the truth she commanded. Jasmine Hayes allowed herself a brief pause, letting the full weight of the room's realization settle into every corner of the lobby. The guests, previously silent and hesitant, now shifted with subtle acknowledgement, some leaning forward, others discreetly raising their phones to record the moment, their expressions a mix of awe and understanding. The broker's hands twitched slightly, a faint attempt to reclaim authority, but Jasmine's calm, unwavering presence rendered every protest ineffective, her controlled posture and steady gaze asserting dominance without a single raised voice. She tapped the tablet one more time, bringing up a complete visual overview of the tower, every floor and unit clearly under her ownership, verified and legally confirmed, the clarity impossible to contest. The subtle clicks of confirmation notifications from her assistant's devices punctuated the silence, signaling that every system and corporate verification had been fully executed. Guests whispered softly, exchanging glances and quiet remarks, the collective awareness of Jasmine's authority spreading incrementally across the lobby, reinforcing the undeniable truth of her position. Jasmine moved with deliberate precision, her eyes scanning the room, noting every reaction, every small shift in posture, every subtle acknowledgement from witnesses who now recognized the correctness of her presence. The broker's gestures became increasingly tentative, his confidence eroded by the combination of verified documentation and the composed assurance radiating from Jasmine. A few guests began discreetly murmuring their recognition of the ownership, their whispers creating a soft, almost imperceptible chorus that reinforced the shift in perception. Jasmine allowed a controlled, slight smile, signaling acknowledgement of the alignment forming across the room, the quiet validation of her authority now evident in every subtle nod, every captured recording, and every questioning glance that had transformed into understanding. The lobby, once filled with skepticism and challenge, had become a stage for Jasmine's deliberate assertion of power. Each person present a witness to the careful orchestration of truth and preparation that had led to this moment. Her movements, precise and intentional, punctuated the growing acknowledgement, her presence anchoring the energy in the room, guiding it toward a unified recognition of authority. Guests adjusted their attention, leaning in slightly, some quietly commenting to each other, others holding their devices to ensure that the entirety of the verification and demonstration of control was documented. Jasmine's calm composure and methodical execution left no room for doubt, reinforcing that every assumption, every misjudgment, and every premature dismissal of her authority had been corrected through measured action, careful planning, and the undeniable presentation of verified evidence. The broker's expressions shifted, his uncertainty apparent, while Jasmine's presence dominated the space with quiet assurance, leaving the lobby aligned fully with the reality of her command and the anticipation of the next decisive steps that would consolidate her authority over the tower. Jasmine Hayes allowed the moment to stretch, letting the full recognition of her authority settle into the space, the lobby now completely attuned to the clarity of truth she projected. Guests who had been observing with cautious interest now leaned forward, their expressions shifting from curiosity to acknowledgment, each subtle nod and whispered comment reinforcing the undeniable reality of her ownership. The broker, pale and uncertain, made one final attempt to reference rules and procedures, but Jasmine's calm, unwavering presence rendered every objection irrelevant, her composed gaze and deliberate movements anchoring the room in certainty. She stepped closer to the central area, her heels making a soft, measured click against the marble floors, each step deliberate, each movement purposeful, commanding attention without a word. The tablet in her hand displayed the complete documentation, floor plans, deeds, corporate confirmations, and financial verifications, each visual reinforcing the legitimacy of her presence in a way that left no room for doubt. Jasmine's assistant confirmed quietly that all systems were synchronized, notifications sent, and verifications completed, reinforcing the irrevocable truth of her claim. Guests shifted, some subtly exchanging glances, others quietly raising their phones to capture the unfolding affirmation, the atmosphere charged yet controlled, a collective acknowledgment of authority forming around her. The broker's attempts to assert dominance waned, his gestures hesitant, his voice uncertain, as the room collectively recognized the truth Jasmine had orchestrated with quiet precision. Jasmine allowed herself a brief, controlled smile, acknowledging the alignment of perception among the witnesses, the subtle support evident in each reaction, each recording, each quiet murmur. She moved deliberately through the space, observing every angle, noting every gesture of acknowledgement, ensuring that the full scope of her command was recognized by all present. The guests' attention, focused entirely on the verification displayed before them, created a unified awareness of her authority, a subtle but powerful affirmation that the assumptions and dismissals that had preceded her arrival were completely overturned. Jasmine's controlled presence, the methodical presentation of proof, and the subtle cues of acknowledgement from the audience conveyed the full measure of her power without a single raised voice, allowing the witnesses to internalize the correction of perception and the establishment of rightful authority. The broker, isolated and uncertain, became a silent observer as Jasmine's composed actions and the quiet verification of facts asserted her control over the tower. The space transformed from one of skepticism and challenge into a testament to preparation, composure, and the undeniable reality of Jasmine Hayes' command, leaving the room fully aligned with the authority she embodied and the impending decisions that would solidify her position beyond any further dispute. Jasmine Hayes stood in the center of the lobby, the soft hum of conversations replaced by a reverent silence as every guest absorbed the culmination of the moment. The full tower layout gleamed on the tablet, each unit and floor verified, every transaction and legal document meticulously confirmed, leaving no space for dispute or doubt. Her assistant quietly confirmed the final synchronization with corporate systems, the subtle notifications signaling that the verification process was complete, and every record now reflected the truth of Jasmine's authority. Guests exchanged glances, some whispering confirmations, others holding their phones high to capture the scene, their reactions a blend of astonishment, respect, and acknowledgement. The broker, once so certain of his control, now stood frozen, his gestures tentative, his voice silenced by the undeniable clarity of the evidence Jasmine had orchestrated. Jasmine allowed herself a controlled, slight smile, recognizing the quiet alignment forming across the room, the subtle support and understanding from every witness present. She moved with deliberate precision, her heels clicking softly against the polished marble floor, every step reinforcing the calm authority she embodied. Each swipe of the tablet reinforced the scope of her command, her presence radiating a quiet power that required no raised voice, no dramatic gesture, only the undeniable truth of preparation, poise, and verified ownership. Guests leaned in, their focus unwavering, observing the meticulous presentation of evidence, the controlled assurance of Jasmine's demeanor, and the collective recognition of her rightful authority over the tower. The lobby, once filled with uncertainty and challenge, now held a sense of equilibrium, each observer subtly acknowledging the correction of perception, the reversal of assumptions, and the establishment of definitive control. Jasmine's gaze swept across the room, noting each reaction, every subtle nod, every raised phone, each a testament to the transformation in awareness she had facilitated. The broker's attempts to interject were muted by the composed presence of Jasmine, his previous confidence replaced by visible uncertainty, while the guest's reactions reinforced the complete shift in authority. The soft whispers, quiet recordings, and subtle acknowledgments created a chorus of validation, a living confirmation of the inevitability of Jasmine's command. Every element of the lobby, the polished floors, the reflective glass, the attentive witnesses, was now aligned with the undeniable reality of her authority. Jasmine remained poised, her movements deliberate and measured, allowing the room to fully register the depth of her influence and the correctness of her presence. The energy in the space, once tense and skeptical, now resonated with recognition, clarity, and anticipation for the next actions that would solidify her position. As she surveyed the lobby, calm, composed, and fully in command, it became evident that the assumptions, dismissals, and misjudgments that had greeted her arrival were entirely corrected, leaving a room of witnesses fully aligned with the truth, prepared to acknowledge and respect the authority of Jasmine Hayes over every aspect of the tower and the unfolding decisions that would complete the transformation of perception into reality.